Hello, everybody. Welcome to SDEV 220, so software development with Python. Hopefully, it'll be a really fun class. Python is the programming language in the world when we take into account the obvious exceptions. JavaScript is part of the HTML5 standard, and the internet is everywhere in our world. So obviously, the standard for HTML5 is overwhelmingly the most popular language in the world. And right behind that is the most popular side scripting. So ignoring those and going with what programmers choose to use, Python's at the top of the list. Took it a while to get there. And the reason is that Python is, everything about Python is to make it easier for the human. It's entirely designed to be easy to work with, somewhat intuitive. There's a list we will see some time, or you can just print Zen in Python and you will see the list of what Python's intended to be. It's built into the core idea is built into the language, but everything's to be easier for the human, which means more work for the machine. So Python's also slower than that. But so in the 1990s, after Python was created, 1990s, that was a big deal. Machines were a lot slower than they are today. So a slower programming language is a big deal. So it got pushed back, and then it started to get used for small things. But eventually machines got fast enough that most of our programs, we have to actually take measurements because from a human perspective, we're not going to see it. There are still plenty of things that we can bog it down with, which is what really pushed Python up to the most popular programming language. Around 2012 or so, there was a big breakthrough in machine learning. Y'all probably well aware of that. All the most popular AI stuff that's around today came from that. But for making those, there is a lot of work passed onto the machine, to the point that even if we're in our fastest languages, working in C++, which an interesting thing about C++ is there are certain things that are faster than assembly language. It's been known since C, the precursor to C++, back in the 70s, and people still can't explain it because it doesn't make any sense. A high-level language should not be faster than an assembly language, but it is in certain cases, not across the board, but in certain things it is faster. But even in that fastest language, or even if we went to assembly language and we're typing in almost typing machine instructions directly with just a little bit of human compatibility, so that we weren't trying to make sense just only using 2 buttons to type, the machine learning stuff would still take hours. It'd be a lot of sitting and waiting. We get it started and then we go do something else for hours while it runs. And if we're going to wait for hours anyway, why even bother with the fast programming language? Why not use the easy to work with programming language? And that's what really pushed Python over the top. But machines are continually getting faster, so it's usually not so big of a deal. Some of the other ones can be. Python's also more resource intensive. It's going to use more RAM, keep more registers busy at the same time. It's got more data passing around, so it's more resource intensive. But usually we don't care because machines have continually grown, and it's at the point that we have to be doing something big before that becomes an issue, which Python's really easy to work with, and we're the ones that make the choice on which programming language to work with. So people usually pick the easiest one to work with. Has some nice advantages. So there's some very nice things about it. But with everything, there's benefits and drawbacks to everything. Python in general is a really nice language to work with. It's easy, it's intuitive for humans, more intuitive for humans to work with. Now for our course, Python was the first one of the standardized statewide shells at Ivy Tech to get revamped to the more modern setup. Some of us around the state have started doing it to our own courses on campus. I've started doing it to the other ones, but Python was the first one to get revamped on the standardized statewide shell to something modern. And the precursor to this, everybody see the TK interface package, tkinter, knitter. There's lots of ways it's pronounced. I always just say the whole thing because there's so many ways it's been pronounced, but it was developed back in the late 80s and looks like it was developed back in the late 80s. I think everybody, I see some head nods here in the classroom. So kind of out of date. And the world has become much more connected since then. Things are moving to the cloud. Anybody use the VS Code for their text editor? That's actually a web application. That's a website. It's just running through a special program that makes it look like a desktop application. That's how software is made in the modern world. For those who have had HTML, CSS class, that means the style and how we do the appearance is handled with CSS, which is also super easy, and the kind of mix and match. But that's the modern way of doing things. So that's how we're starting to do that in the software development courses. This was the first one to get revamped. We'll use a framework to build web applications, and we'll see Docker. Because of time constraints, we'll only do kind of the first lesson on Docker. We won't get all the way to loading your web application into Docker, or loading the web application into Docker will be the odds and ends at the end. It's past the assignment. The assignment's just getting started. It's really easy. Once you see how Docker works, you probably almost figure it out yourself by looking at it. Some odds and ends at the end, but a little bit different. So we have to look at different things there, and a lot more focus on code repositories. Python was the first one to get revamped. C# next, and then Java after that. But I started doing it in all the classes I teach on campus because that's the modern way of doing software development. Modern way. There's a transition. We can see for certain that the industry is transitioning that way. It just hasn't fully transitioned yet. So we're not quite ready to leave the PK package or all the packages like that behind yet, but we can see that we are someday. So we need to go ahead and study where the field is going, not where it was 10 years ago. It's going to be beneficial work environment, right? So a lot of changes. I was the first one to do the Ivy Online one when the new shell was developed last summer. So if anybody's looked ahead, you may have noticed some notes on some instructions. This part really confused everybody in the online class. I'm leaving the link here, but this is the one that was most confusing. So we'll cover all that in class. But I left a lot of the resources there as well, and tried to make notes of what was confusing, what confused people the most. Other class. I have some notes here.
Hey, Chris, it looks like the writing on the board is backwards. From my view, it looks like the writing on the board is backwards.
It should be forward. If I move to the right, nope, that looks like I'm moving to the left. That is not what should happen. Is that still backwards?
It is on my screen.
Yes.
Okay, that's from the camera. I have no idea why it's doing that. Oh, I just got that. The mirror only applies to our own screen. But the one that gets transmitted is back. Yeah, that's why I didn't realize it, because apparently it was mirrored. So when it comes back on the monitor, I'm looking at it across the room here, it was showing forward again. Not sure why that is. Well, next we're gonna talk about course policies and things like that. So there's not going to be a lot drawn on the board. And in general, when I draw stuff on the board, this is programming class. So most of our examples are going to be following along code, write code, build applications. And most of what's going to go on the board is pictures. But I will check with the other instructors. I haven't taught in this room in a couple semesters. I'm not sure why the camera is doing that. I'll have to look into that. Make a note here. Why is camera forward backwards? That's not good. There are notes I'm going to put on the board, like pictures. It's mostly going to be pictures and stuff to try to help make sense of what's going on in the code internal to the machine, instead of, so we don't have to try to think through what a bunch of ones and zeros actually mean. We can draw representative pictures. So I guess those won't hurt if they're backwards, but they will usually include words. To tonight is course policies, mostly starting off with course policies. Oh. I'll have to look into that. Somebody put it in the chat room, they were able to flip it. Those cameras do go all the way around, so I'm wondering if it's pointing, if it's actually, as far as the camera is concerned, it's flipped backwards and upside down, but that would make this look upside down, I would think. I'll ask the other instructors about that. I haven't heard anybody mention it or anything, and I know they've been doing Zoom classes here, so I don't want to waste our time digging through settings trying to figure out what it is. There's not much going to be written on the board tonight. We start with some course policies, and then we'll get into examples and things like that. Should be a really fun class. I like the Python programming language. I've been using it for a while. It's definitely way up near the top of my favorites to use. There's trade-offs for everything. Sometimes the inconsistencies are the problem I have, why it's not #1 on my preferred language list. Other languages there's very strict rules that people tend to follow tightly. So you can start to predict how things are named, but Python's all over the place. Might be a Pascal case, might be a camel case, could be juxtaposition, lots of different notational styles when we import libraries, and sometimes not even this consistent across one file. Like Python coders just write whatever's convenient, and that inconsistency means you have to actually memorize things or go look it up every time you can't remember what it is. That's why it's not my absolute favorite, but it is a great language to work with. Easy to use. We'll get to the language here very shortly. We'll start with some course policies and general outline of things. Let me check the chat room. Oh, and also, I know some people will send direct messages. The classroom computers over there, that's what you've seen me step off the screen a couple times. On the camera, it looked like I was pointing. Oh no, that is mirrored. I have no idea why that's backwards. So that's the one that says Christopher has my full name spelled out where I'm signed in, have access to the room. But you'll notice I'm standing over here using my laptop. So if you're one of the people that likes to send direct messages when you have questions, make sure you send them to Chris on the PC, or depending on the night, it might say CB for whenever if I'm on the Chromebook, or Mac if I'm on the MacBook, whichever machine I use. One of the nicest things about Python is it's cross-platform. We don't have to write different code to run on different machines. We don't have to, but some people have done so. So there are certain times where you'll import a library and it behaves different on a PC or a Mac, which was completely unnecessary. Somebody actually had to take steps to do that. They were probably used to the different languages, so they just went ahead and did something different when they got to Python too. It's a great language to work with. We will get to it very, very soon. First off, we'll look at the syllabus. So you notice on the homepage, I usually get rid of those links to modules because you don't need to duplicate all the links and not try to put a to-do list. I may not get it every week, but I usually try to keep up the to-do list on what's going on for the week. Link to the Zoom call, we're right in the classroom, you all know that stuff. And we will be using GitHub quite a bit. So all the class examples, I will create a repository and put them on there. Actually, tonight, we're going to create a repository. That's why I didn't do it in advance, because we're going to use it a lot. They may ever tried to transfer Python scripts through emails and stuff, or just online, and when you download it, you get an error message, a warning. It can be kind of a security risk because most machines will run Python these days. And Python is an interpreted language. We'll talk about that, I believe, next week. It's in the lecture notes, the differences, the subtle differences there. Python can also be a compiled language, but it's an interpreted language, which means it runs line by line, like the terminal, the PowerShell or Bash shell or our actual terminals. So any machine can just download a file and start running it, which is kind of dangerous. C++, we'd have to download it, compile it, and then run it. So there's an extra step in there at least, but Python can just download from the internet and start running. It's kind of a security risk. So in general, we don't transfer scripts that way. In classrooms, you might see it done that way sometimes, but security protocols know there are certain ways that we transfer scripts. One of those being code repositories. So if you download a Python script from GitHub, you don't get those security warnings because the security protocols know that it's like, oh, okay, yeah, Python scripts should be downloaded from GitHub. Everything's good here. This person knows what GitHub is, so they know what they're downloading. So that's the way we transfer files. So that's what we do in the classroom. Speaking of GitHub, it's not on the agenda yet, but in the summer, I will be running a special topics class specifically on GitHub. It's going to add to the SDEV curriculum, but you can do a test run before it actually adds in there. And it's the schedule's not going to be out for a couple months, but SDEV 193, special topics in software development, is going to be a class where we take a deep dive into GitHub this summer. It's a trial run before that actually becomes part of the curriculum at some point in the future. The committee already decided to create the class, but it takes a minute. Academia moves slow. Y'all are probably well aware of that. So we'll set up our GitHub links and talk about that some tonight. A couple things there. Because I assume everybody has seen some Python before, right? Yeah, both of the prerequisites for this class use Python now. Before the new shell, that was kind of problematic because the 220 class, the old version of that, didn't go as far as people would get in the 140 class. So it was kind of odd, but we take it a lot further now, and it was designed knowing that the two prerequisite classes have Python. So we take it a lot further than we take Python further than we go in some of the other programming languages. It becomes a lot more of in the name. If I go back to the home page, software development. Well, it's abbreviated here, software development with Python. So it's software development class, it's not Python class. We're just using Python to study software development. And since everybody's seen some Python before, we don't have to spend as much time with the intricacies of Python. We can spend more on the software development side, like GitHub and Docker and CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment. Which is something that in most of the other 200 level SDEV classes might show up in your textbook. Whereas in Python, well, we actually have an assignment in it. So yeah, everybody coming into this class has probably seen some Python before, so we'll just jump up and do the good stuff with Python. So hopefully it'll be a really fun class. Nice change, some changes. So going in the syllabus here, there's my contact information. You all know how the modern world is. There's lots and lots and lots of things that wants to send us notifications. Every other website you go to, you have to block notifications or you're going to start getting them. During the semester, when classes are running, there are only two things that make noise on my phone. I turn all the notifications off except for text messages and the Ivy Learn inbox. The only two things that make noise on my phone. There's lots of ways to get a hold of me. I check all the other regular communication channels many, many times a day. But text messages and the inbox are the only two things that will actually beep on my phone. And since they did this, they added another link here where we can get to our regular email from here. Since they did that, it seems to be taking the inbox messages like an hour to make noise on my phone. So there's like a delay. Hopefully that's just some transition things and that'll straighten back out. But those two ways are the quickest to get a hold of me, but I check my email 20, 25 times a day. So if you send me an email, it will not be long until I get it. My office is right outside the lab here. It's Ogle 160, so 2 doors down from the lab here on campus. I have office hours on Monday and Wednesday, so right before this class, between the afternoon class and this class, I'm there for an hour. On Tuesday and Thursday, 2.5 hours listed there. But I also have other hours or like administrative hours. There's a bunch of stuff on the block schedule. If you look at my office door, there's a whole lot of blocks there that are listed as other things. But if I'm in the office, I'm in the office. If you have a question, let me know. And I'm always happy to help. Send me a question anytime you have it. if you have a question at 2:45 in the morning, I tend to go to bed early and wake up early. Wake up early in the mornings. So as a result of that, I tend to go to bed fairly early, earlier than the average computer person. But if you have a question at 2:45 in the morning, send it to me and I will get back to you as soon as I see it. If I happen to wake up and see it, I will get back to you very, very quickly. So anytime you have a question, let me know. Don't worry about those hours in particular. I also do Sunday office hours online. Over the years, I've noticed most people do their homework Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening. Nobody has questions on Tuesday morning. Right? All the questions happen on Sunday night. So Sunday from 4 to 5, I'm on the Zoom call. Oh, it still says it on this syllabus. I used to do that on the chat room here in the course, but the only chat messages that ever came in were people asking if we could hop on the Zoom call real quick. So anymore, I usually just do it on the Zoom call, and sometimes it's been a couple times I forgot to even check the chat room. But most people go right to the Zoom call. I'll take out that or chat room thing, or try to remember to be on there. But those office hours, or just get a hold of me. I'm always happy to help. I'm here on campus every day of the week, and yeah, I'm available to help if you need it. A few things here, EdTech. We just got a new EdTech coordinator. She started a couple days before the Christmas break. Done this previously at a high school, so she's not brand. She knows what she's doing. But just started at Ivy Tech. I can't remember her name yet. She just started, so I haven't can't quite remember her name now. But there's the link to get a hold of her, or that's for if there's a problem with the learning management system. So LMS problems, so something on Ivy Learn. You might hear some people call it Canvas. It's a Canvas product. Ivy Tech just customized it, like they always do. Put their green colors on it, gave it an Ivy name. If you have any problems, get a hold of me, or there's the line for Ivy Learn help if you need it, the link for that. Disability support. If you need any accommodations, this one gets a lot of people, especially starting out, because people who transition from high school into college courses. In high school, that is entirely covered for you. When you're a minor, the school has your record, medical history, they know all that stuff about you, and they just go ahead and do it. But when you're in college, even if you're in high school taking college courses, so a sophomore in high school is in this class now because they're ready to get a jump start on their life. 15 years old, taking a college course, you're going to be treated as an adult and considered an adult. So just like if you hit that 18th birthday, that becomes private information. So unlike a high school, the college doesn't already know that about you. You have to take the first step and let them know that you need accommodations. But after that, then it's like it is in high school, and there's some great people that work in that office. They will get the ball rolling, get everything set up, tell me what changes need to be made and all that. But for those transitioning, especially for those transitioning from high school to college, you have to take the first step, because that's personal private information once you're considered an adult. And that catches a lot of people off guard, which then impacts their first college courses. So Learning Commons is where tutoring is. I'm in there on Fridays this semester, but the former dean, who also knows a lot of coding in Python, is in there several days a week. There's at least one student tutor that I know knows Python really well. So there's several IT tutors, but there's tutors for lots and lots of subjects: math, writing, physics, accounting, chemistry, other classes than this. If you need some help, things are being remodeled. If you didn't know that, Baptist Hospital gave the school a lot of money a few years back, and they're remodel all the medical facilities, which is the biggest chunk of our school. But then that overlapped other things, like, well, we can't have brand new medical stuff with a 30-year-old classroom right next to it for English people. So it led to a whole lot of remodeling. So another thing this semester, this is a 6 o'clock class, so it'll probably be wrapped up by now, but there's going to be noise and dust and things like that we'll just have to deal with periodically. As things get remodeled, and then it'll be much, or a lot nicer stuff. But it's mostly the other building that is being remodeled. And while it's being remodeled, the tutors are in the front hall right next to academic advice. You come in the front door, start walking down the tiled hallway. First, well, you pass the bookstore, and then the next door is the academic advisors. Most people have probably been in there. Keep walking, and the very next door is where the tutors currently are located until the construction finishes up. And they're going to be in what used to be the library. It's going to be called the Learning Commons. To be really nice to put in another fireplace over there. The fireplace here in Oga Hall tends to attract people, especially in the winter. So like, yeah, we need another one of those. Nice spot, an actual coffee bar. So not just a Keurig machine there. There's gonna be cappuccino, like proper cappuccino and espresso machines and proper coffee. Replacing a bunch of the solid walls with glass walls to lighten it up, make it open and more modern looking. It's gonna be really nice, but until the construction's finished, there's gonna be noise and dust and all those things associated with that. There's a dumpster right outside the door here for those on the Zoom call. So little things like that we have to accommodate. Y'all can read a lot of this. I was just hitting some high points. Ivy Life is where the clubs are. If you haven't been to, and if you haven't seen that, because everything was shut down for 2 years and there wasn't any clubs doing things. But now that we're coming back to campus, humans are a very social species, right? We interact with each other. So now that things are coming back to campus, the club started back last spring, and it's formerly the computer club, but there's a lot of technology, right? Our world is very interconnected, a high-tech world, so they drop computer from the name and change it to technology club or tech club to expand and include other things anyway as well, catch all those interests. But started last spring, and we're already up to 30 members on the roster, so it grew quickly. On Tuesday nights this semester, they're going to be gathered and playing D&D. That usually goes hand in hand with IT stuff. So if anybody wants to come to campus on Tuesday nights, the tech club is going to have a regular D&D thing, other events. And then the end of the semester, they like to have a game jam, just gather for an afternoon of eating pizza and playing video games to relax after a hefty semester. But there's other clubs as well. So it's good to get out and socialize. Testing services, I copied and pasted the statement in there. Y'all can read it. We don't have any proctored exams. The exams are just this. This might be a class with no exams. I think this is one of the shells with no exams. We just have projects. If there's exams or anything in here is open book. You can look it up, take it on your own time. There's a due date is the restriction on it. Just make sure you get it to me by the due date. We'll talk about that soon. Library statement. Ivy Plus Career Link, that was changing the name to the acronym, the EECs, employer, ECC.
CCEC.
ECEC, yes. That acronym that nobody could remember what it stood for. Yeah, I'd always try to think out what it stood for and still get it wrong. But they changed to Ivy Plus Career Link. And everybody comes to school for the college for the same reason. Get a good job, make a big paycheck. There's a department that helps with that. And not just while you're a student, when you graduate and you're Ivy Tech alumni, they're still there to help get your resume polished up, portfolio put together, software developers. So that's kind of the industry standard is kind of a portfolio thing. Show off your work, practice for interviews, things like that. Help department to help you find a job, and that's why everybody comes to school. So you can reach out to them. They're there. See the links there. Right now, here at Sellersburg, we have an interim dean. Hopefully our regular dean will be back soon. We'll have a on-campus dean before. It looks like everything's in track to hopefully before the end of the semester. She'll be back in America. But for the time being, we have the dean out of Bloomington is the interim dean. So if there's anything that any issues with the class you feel need to escalate it up to my bosses, that would be who you reach out to. Hopefully that won't ever happen. He's a very nice guy. Bloomington's not far away, so he comes down here regularly for meetings and stuff. Very friendly. So if he's down on campus, he might pop his head in the classroom and say hi at some point. This one I like to talk about, IV cares. Everybody needs help sometimes, right? I paused on the disability services earlier, but you don't necessarily have to have the documented disability to need help occasionally, right? Everybody needs help. There's a great department for that. It's all wrapped up in IV cares. They have an office on Ogo Hall. A great department in there, able to help. One thing that might apply in here is they have loaner laptops. So if you're having trouble with getting your own computer, financial stuff or something, they have computers you can borrow. Not top of the line computers. Probably not going to be playing the latest, greatest video games on them, but they will work great for running Microsoft Word and get your essays turned in class. But they're just loaner laptops to get people by when they need them. Other things, there's a food pantry right in there, but the second link is the one I always like to look at, because everybody already knows there's lots of help available in our society, right? We know that stuff's out there, but we don't know exactly where it's at. And once we find out where it's at, then we have to find out where the application is, and who do we submit the application to, and how many copies do we have to send around, and all sorts of stuff like that. So somebody went ahead and consolidated a lot of that stuff into one place. So this isn't the help directly, but it's a consolidation of links to go right to the help when you need it. Lots and lots of things. So I live in Clarksville, so I'll put in that zip code 47129. I'll search Clarksville and 2,108 programs. And in the afternoon class, when we looked at this, maybe 1:15 or so, there was 2,111 around Clarksville. So it's dynamic, it goes up and down. It shows all sorts of things. I wonder if that one I like to point out is, so maybe you need help paying for gas. It's like, okay, I'm having trouble getting gas money to get to school. Did this one finally run out? So a lot of people might not have even known about this. No. Until this runs out of money, this program's still going. If you worked in the restaurant before the pandemic and lost your restaurant position because, at the very least, all the restaurant workers had to quit going to work and they depend on tips. So the government set up a huge pool to cover gas expenses and several others, but the gas expense is still going. A lot of people didn't know that was there, which is probably why it's still going. If you need help for that, or there's some other ones, transportation, urgent need, medical things, there's a food pantry here on Ivy Tech. There's food pantries, lots of food pantries, but the Ivy Cares program has one there, or just money, maybe help paying for childcare. 19 programs around Clarksville to help pay for daycare for kids. Everybody needs help sometimes, and this isn't the help itself, this is the links to where you would fill out that application. And that way you don't have to spend hours and hours and hours trying to figure out what's available and where it's at. Somebody already consolidated all of the stuff into one spot. A very useful one because everybody needs help sometimes. So our book for the class is, now we're getting into material. It's an O'Reilly book. It is built into the course. I am not sure why it was on the list to be on one of the regular ones, Cengage Plus or Ivy Plus, but I didn't see it. And what I've been doing is go to modules, and in module 1, there's a reading assignment that goes right to it. And the other links like this are buried deeply. They don't have their own unique thing in the module. So I always just go to module 1 and click that link and go to it. And then table of contents is on the right. It's an O'Reilly book. They're usually, which are a little on the cheaper side. You should have options to order loose leaf copies and stuff, but I think I paid $18 for this on Amazon. So I started trying to get the free copy, and after a few minutes, it seemed like too much of a headache, and it's like, it's an O'Reilly book. I'm just gonna go find one for $20 on Amazon. If you like paper copies, ebooks have their advantages. Personally, I like both. There's certain things I would do to make things memorable, like reading along, studying. What's something here? potentially run into limitations with the font you're trying to display in the console. We'll see that soon. To make things memorable, when I study, I'd read things like that and try to make it memorable. Like maybe kick it across the room. Can't really do that with an ebook. Well, you can, but the ebook's probably showing on something way more expensive than a textbook. Or stand up and off the couch, walk across the house and fling the textbook to the bathroom. And then on test day, you have that little extra memory. It's like, oh yeah, that's where I tried to flush the textbook down the toilet. That might not be the best example, but little things to help memory. I like that. Oh, I like paper books, but ebooks are great because like things like the index are all links. So you don't have to go find the page after looking up. You just click and get to it, or Control F. I always use that link and use the table of contents over here to find the particular section. So the book is there if you need it. We'll do some stuff away from the book as well. So, and there are ways to order a free copy. But you don't have to do anything. But if you want one, those ways to get a free copy, because O'Reilly Books don't do the loose leaf version, like Pearson and Cengage has become a big fan of, where they don't sell you a book, they just sell you a stack of paper. O'Reilly Books doesn't do that, so you have to go through a bunch of hoops. And I started into it, and after a few minutes, it's like, I'm just going to go give somebody on Amazon $20 for it. Oh, and the chat room. That's all right, Zach. Yeah, we're just going over policies. And you've had me in a few classes. I'm consistent with course policies. There were a couple changes. We'll get to the course policies I changed here very soon. But yeah, just getting started tonight. Course outline of record. Y'all have seen this everywhere. Everything I always like to point out is every course you take at Ivy Tech, not just ours, has this list right here: major course learning objectives, the things we're supposed to be learning, stuff that this class is a prerequisite for. You go in there expecting that they know, they're going to expect that you know this. Another way I like to phrase this is the checklist to make sure you feel like you got your money's worth out of a class. The stuff we're supposed to be learning. So near the end of the semester, you always want to look back at this list, not just in all of your classes, and make sure you feel like you learned the stuff you were supposed to learn in the course. I usually try to remind everybody about that about week 6 or 7, because that's when we want to look back, and then the lists are always vague and open to interpretation. But hopefully you can go through there, and if there's anything on that list that you don't think that's the questions you want to ask. Those are the questions you want to ask at the end of the semester. The stuff we're supposed to be learning, just like the name implies. And that's it. That's for all your courses, not just this one. Always look back at that list and make sure you feel like you learned what you were supposed to. Academic honesty statement. I heard a quote recently that was referred to in the phrase, with that phrase I just gave. The person said, I heard a quote recently and wrote it down. They didn't say where it came from, and they probably heard it from the same place, so it just passed around. But the quote was, plagiarism is stupid, but mistakes are not. I really like that quote because it made a lot of sense. We're going to make mistakes. That's part of learning. But everybody knows to do your own work, all that stuff. Copyright, ADA, kind of relates to disability accommodations, with everything. Title IX, everybody in here is an adult. Even high schoolers taking the class, you're in an adult situation. So I'm going to consider you an adult for all intents and purposes, even if by official standards you haven't hit that 18th birthday yet, where the government draws the semi-arbitrary line. You're in an adult situation, you should know the standards of this, or as far as Title IX goes, be tried as an adult if something happens. But everybody knows the cultural standards. The statement is there. You know what our society expects, and how poorly our society, how harshly our society will come back to anything that would fall under a Title IX violation. It's a big deal, so everybody knows that, but the statement's there. let's see, so now some other policies. Learn Anywhere course, I really like Learn Anywhere. I will be here on campus every Monday and Wednesday, 6 o'clock. If you want to join me here on campus, if you want to join on the Zoom call. And even before things like this, before the pandemic shut everything down, in software development classes, I was using Google Hangouts back then. I would still project the class examples across the internet. So even if you're in class, I would recommend signing in to the Zoom call. That way you can see the examples clearly. Because our class examples, we're going to open a text editor and write a bunch of code. So that's kind of hard to see from a projector or otherwise. And it's an active subject we learn by doing, so you want to follow along with those. And our general format is we'll have the class is scheduled 6 to 9:50, and we're not going to be lecturing that long every time. It's very unlikely we'll hit 9:50, really hit the whole night at all. There will be a couple ones but the nights that go long will be really, really interesting things, like where we're talking about CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment, which is a way more realistic way to release your software than that waterfall method, that so many textbooks like to talk about. It's so organized. So it'd be interesting things. The longest nights are really interesting things. Hopefully, if you're in this class, hopefully you find them really, really interesting. Some of us really like programming. I have fun when I write code. I get that same feeling that if I grab an instrument and write a song, or pull out some paints and canvas and throw a picture together. It's an art. It's art, and that's the way I feel afterwards. So the well-paying job aspect of it is just a little bonus because it's really, really fun. I enjoy it. A lot of times after a heavy semester of teaching people to write programs, I'll relax on the break by writing programs. I actually consider it fun. So hopefully that's how the class is going to be. In general, talk for a little while, lecture for a little while, very example based and diagrams to try to make sense of what's going on in the code and get understanding so that we can grow it and expand it, know what's going on with it. Take a break, maybe some more of that, and then we'll wrap up. And I'll call it lab time, but basically it's an active subject we learn by doing, so it's time to do stuff. Right? Work on writing your own code, or if you have homework in other classes, that's fine too. But I will just be sitting here during that time until 9:50. My schedule is open, ready to answer questions. The exception to that on the evening classes is if everybody leaves campus and I'm the very last person on campus except the security guard, I will probably take the 10 minutes to drive back to Clarksville. So there'll be 10 minutes there'll be a 10-minute gap between as I head down the interstate from here to Clarksville, and I live almost right off the interstate. I live on Applegate Lane, so I jump off the interstate and then it's like a quarter mile from my house. So if I'm the last person on campus, I might go ahead and head back to Clarksville. But otherwise, until 9:50, I'm just going to be sitting there doing nothing except waiting on questions to come my way. And I do teach classes other than this, so if you have another class with more pressing homework and want to ask that question, you can feel free to send that my way as well. But it's time to work on the stuff because it's an active subject. The only way to learn it is by doing it, by writing code. So we'll be doing lots of that. For those who have not had me before, due dates are different in my class than some of your other classes. Most of your classes probably have everything due at 11:59 p.m. on Sunday. Right? And I like to change that up because that is not how the real world works at all. That is not good practice for the real world. So due dates change, late policy, things change. So you'll notice the due dates and deadlines is probably the longest section in the syllabus. And I do stick to this. And this, for those who had me before, there was some policy changes here. So in general, homework assignments are due after the next class period. I have a story that goes with this. I was in a class, one of those classes where homework was due at the very beginning of the class. It was 9:30 in the morning. So if you showed up at 9:32, you could not turn your homework in because you're already late for class. Excuse me for a second. Yes.
I don't know where I'm going.
Which one are you looking for?
Micro?
room number. Okay, 146 is on the other side of this room, but you have to walk around.
Okay.
So you go up there and turn by the fireplace.
Be right here.
Yeah, and come, it's on the other side of this room. So
Okay.
they have a wall together, but you have to go all the way around. You're welcome. Sorry about that. So yeah, I was in this class, one of those classes where no late homework assignment should show up at 9:32, you can't turn it in. Ask a question on Friday night and then send an email, and the instructor said, ask in class next week. Like, I can't turn in the homework after I ask the question. And that always bothered me. So I always try to make sure there's a chance to ask questions. So there's a Monday, Wednesday class. We only have one module because of the holiday. We only have one day this week. But usually Monday will start each module. So next Monday starts module 2. And then Monday at midnight is when your module 1 homework is due. And late submissions are accepted, or that's so that you can, there's a chance to ask questions before the due date. Late homework's accepted with a 3% deduction. Every day the computer automatically deducts 3%, down to 50%. It does stop, which I also bottom out when I'm grading things, which generally only happens at the end of the semester. If I start making marks and it gets very far, you'll probably get an email from me, especially at the beginning of the semester. You will probably get an email listing out what you need to redo before I put a bad grade on it, or at least giving you the option to redo it. When we run out of time at the end, that can't do that quite so much, but the automatic late deduction stops at 50%. And when I'm grading things, I also stop at 50%. Because a high F you can still recover from. Actually, I might stop before 50%. And if I start marking points off and those like, okay, this just entered F territory. And when you mark the F on the grade as a grade on something, there's not really a difference between 55 and 20, except that the 20 is a lot harder to recover from. So I stopped grading at that point. But especially near the beginning of the semester, I'm more likely to send you an email with a list of the things to fix and resubmit. A computer's tracking that. It's automatic. So things are due at 11:59 p.m., which means if you turn it in at 12 a.m., that late penalty is there's going to be a late penalty applied to it. This one's new. So course policy changes in course policies aren't based off one person. It builds up over time. But certain things can happen, like somebody might ask for an extension in module 1. Like, yeah, I got busy. Can I have a couple more days to do this? Perhaps an exact quote there. A couple more days to get the module 1 homework in. And then come the last 2 or 3 days of the semester, finally turn that homework in. That's quite a couple of days, or wonder why the late penalty exception didn't apply on modules 2 through 7. It's like, well, you said it was okay to turn stuff late in for module 1, not the entire course. So I put an upper limit on it. Obviously, every example is different, right? If you come down with same pneumonia, that's traditionally you're going to be in the hospital bed for 6 days, right? So 3-day extension is not going to be much, but the expectation is going to be 3 days. So homework's generally due on Monday. If you say I got overwhelmed, couldn't get this finished, I understand how that goes. A bunch of stuff happens, life happens sometimes, and you need a little bit more time. Expect that it gets pushed back to Thursday, not till the end of the semester. So sort of an upper limit. Expect 3 days, but really it's case by case. But yeah, we'll say 3 days is the exemption for no late penalty. That'll probably go back and forth in wording over the next few semesters to try to figure out the best way. And then there's different things. Quizzes are like the homework. They're due the following Monday, 3% point deduction if it's late, but a quiz, you only have 1 extra week. Anything labeled as an assignment, you have to the end of the semester. But a quiz, you only have 7 days to get that turned in. Set up assignments, you can only get the points for them during the module where they're there. That's set up with assignments. So like in the afternoon class, has a better example. That's the website web development class. So we need a domain host. So there's points for setting up the domain hosting site, but you can only get those points on week 1. But on week 2, you still have to do that. You can't host your websites without a domain host of some sorts or an AWS server. You have to have something to host the websites, but you can only get points available on the first week. We don't have as much set up. GitHub and a couple of things later, but there are a couple there. So make sure you get those in. Otherwise, it's just missing points for something you have to do anyway. Discussion boards also only 1 week. Those were originally intended to take the place of casual conversation. Again, traditional classroom, everybody shows up at the same time, walks down the hall at the same time, sits in class, takes a break at the same time, heads back to the parking lot at the same time. So humans are a social species, so you're going to interact with your classmates. And the thing you have in common, the topic of conversation that might show up, is the class you take together. That contributes to your learning, to improving your understanding of the knowledge. But it is definitely missing an online format, right? Especially asynchronous online courses where we all just take them at our own time in our own places. So discussion boards were supposed to be an attempt to get some of that back. Most people use them as write-in assignments, but they exist. And I go with the name discussion, I'll say it that way. Discussion boards are something that exists for our course, and it's called discussion. So just like if you showed up at a party half an hour later than you were supposed to, and your friends tell you you just missed the greatest conversation ever, you can't bring it back up. Right? If you miss the conversation, you miss the conversation. So I treat discussion boards like that. So no late submissions on discussion boards. Exams. This might be a class without exams or project-based. Some of the classes are, but my general policy, I just copy and paste it here. There's exactly 1 week to do exams, and it's usually a calendar week. So regardless of whatever the due date based off the modules is, exams are typically Sunday at 12 a.m. to Saturday at 11:59 p.m. What's listed on a calendar. So I do change up due dates. Make sure you keep an eye on the due dates. It's the big thing if you haven't had me before, because everything due at the same time every week in all your classes is not how the real world works. So I don't like to do that in the classroom. I like to switch it up a little. Deadlines are in Eastern time. All of our schedule stuff is based off Eastern time. This is Learn Anywhere, so it counts as an on-campus class. So we go up to Sellersburg time zone. What time is it? Almost it. Okay, so moving on here, makeup policy. I just kept the default one there. Drop and withdraw dates. Drop are for, you can do that basically the first week up till next Tuesday. That's the one that completely disappears from your transcript. It's like you never signed up for it. That's where when you're like trying to figure out what classes to take and you see something that sounds super interesting. It's like, oh, that's exactly what I came to school to study. And you register for that class and you show up the first day and discover it's something you already took and they just changed the name of it. No need to take it again. So, but you don't want it messing up your transcript. So that's what drops are. It completely disappears like you never registered for it to begin with. You only have a couple days to do that. Withdrawal, on the other hand, we have till about the end of February in here. And that one does leave a W on your transcript. So that's if you're not going to be able to pass the class, you know, for certain that you're too overwhelmed or something. A bunch of things in life happened outside of college, right? A promotion at work showed up, it's going to double your salary. It's kind of hard to say no to that, right? So like, oh, this other position opened up, it pays twice as much as your current position. If you want to go over there, it's like, I'm definitely not going to be able to finish those classes this semester in that case, because things happen. it took me a long time to come up with a positive version of that. So all the examples, I often think of the bad things, but life happens sometimes, and we're not going to finish our class. In that case, recognizing it and putting a W on the transcript so it doesn't destroy your GPA or anything, it can be the better option. It can show that you recognize when it's time to step back and reevaluate things. You can do that up to the end of the semester. The two ways to kind of get out of the course, as opposed to just not coming. If you just suddenly stop coming, then you're still enrolled in the course, and at the end of the semester, I still have to turn a grade in for you. And if I haven't seen you in 6 weeks of an 8-week course, there's only one grade that can be turned in. A bunch of default things here y'all can read if you want. I kept the policy is instructors will respond within 36 hours. If you don't hear from me in 12 hours, something bad probably happened. Text messages and Ivy Learn messages are the only two things that make noise on my phone, but I check my emails and everything else constantly. So I will get back to you usually very, very quickly. I just left the sort of default policy in there. Conversations, notifications, you can read about that. With due dates, if you haven't seen it before, there's the calendar here. A lot of people know about the calendar, but there's one of the most useful, probably the most useful button on the calendar people don't seem to know about. So we have all of this. I guess this class is turned off. This one, software development with Python. Oh no, that's 50p. That's the online one. There it is. So Sellersburg course, I turned that on. You can see the due date showed up. Oh, let me make that not brown, so that it doesn't look like there's quite that many. There we go. So the blue ones there on the screen are for this course. It automatically crosses them off. Really straightforward. But the big one, which on the TVs in here is in the way. Let me move these Zoom thumbnails out of the way. The big one is over here on the right-hand side. There's this link that says calendar feed. Like all of them, calendars are standardized. So whatever calendar you normally use, iCal, Google Calendar, whatever one came on your phone, you're not sure which one it is, they're all standardized. So just copy this URL to whatever calendar you normally use to get that stuff over there. I recently found out a lot of people don't know that button's there. It's like, well, calendars are standardized, and we're software developers, so be aware of that. If you go to make a calendar app, that is standardized across the board. Whatever you do in your calendar app should work with Outlook and iCal and Google Calendar, and there should be something that you can copy and paste from them and put in your calendar to make it work, or something from your calendar you can copy and paste and put in the Outlook calendar, and it's going to work. Standardization can be nice at times because calendars are something everybody needs, but everybody has different preferences on it. So there's no shortage of it. Now back to the syllabus and a couple things before we finish up here, or before we take a break. I'll finish up. There's one actually doing stuff after a break, but we'll get all the policies out of the way. So, well, I guess what's left is just a list of things. Types of assignments, discussion boards, there's code-along tutorials. Those are built into the shell where you just follow the tutorial and kind of go through those. Programming assignments out of the book or some custom written ones that were whoever developed the statewide course shell. Whoever developed the statewide course shell put a couple together, or traditional programming assignments where you're given the problem and you have to code up the solution. There's labs, case studies and stuff. Those are the more modern things. Using Docker, using Django, we'll be doing quite a bit of framework. We'll get to that soon. There is attendance and participation points. 7% of the grade at the end. I take attendance for record keeping purposes, but those don't really affect your grade. This is just that a little bump at the end to really, it's to reward the people that show up to class and consistently work really hard. Because without that they do that, and the people that occasionally stroll into class and spend the entire class lecture looking at Facebook and stumble through their assignments to get something turned in, there's not that separation. So just that's supposed to be just a little bump for the people that consistently work really hard and all that. A few points at the end. Then a final project is going to be a big one. Your final project is going to be some sort of application built in the Django framework. So it'll be a web application, which there was some misunderstanding before. I do not need a website. Some people spend a long time making a big, huge website, like 20 pages or more. I've seen this in more than one class now. Like 20 pages of static HTML content. And then they try to do the part that actually relates to the class, the application to put in there, and they wouldn't get it finished because they spent all their time on that. I only need the one page. You can just tell me the imaginary version of what it goes into. So it's an application. It's just going to run in a browser, not on a desktop application. We'll be using the Django framework for that. We will see that soon in class. That is by far the most popular framework to build web applications in Python. In general, though, it's an active subject we learn by doing. Stuff spelled out here. There's quite a few things. Choose IDE. There's going to be one essay to do. It's a new technology report. I do these in a lot of courses. No matter what field you're in, it's important to stay up to date on the field. And IT moves quickly, so it's hard to stay up on it. So by the end of the semester, it's in module 1, but I think it's also in module like 5 and 8. So there's a reminder along the way to just do this by the end of the semester, because in module 8, when it's actually due, you will probably be really busy. Right? That's how you all know how the end of the semesters go. This is a 200 level class, so it's nobody's first semester. So it's an essay, but for those who haven't had me before, the regular essay format's boring. That was designed like back in the 20s before we even had computers. We can do way better than black letters on white paper these days. So that's acceptable, but there's alternatives. This is a report, so you can think like a news report. So video submission is acceptable as well. There's a video recorder built right in here. Canvas Studio, if you click this link and the green down at the bottom. It's actually Webcast-O-Matic screen recorder. They have a free version that's really nice, but leaves watermarks on stuff, things like that. They have a paid for version that's even nicer. This is the paid for version. So the first time you come over here and hit the record button, which is behind stuff here, it'll download the software, and then the next time you hit the record button, it'll just start recording. And it saves it right here. And then any place where we can submit stuff. So your submissions have a tab where you can put Canvas in, or the discussion boards. That's another place where videos might go good. Right? Like instead of writing this, it's much better if I just make a video. Let me post this. So let me go to a random discussion board here. If you have something about big data, like maybe you're giving the Google Cloud Platform a try, everybody gets $300, 300 of whatever your local currency is to try out Google Cloud Platform. So maybe you want to go in there and use Big Table. That's the database the Google search engines use. $400 a month if you pay for it, but it's the official Google search bot database. So if you like data, that's a database that might be worth going through that $300 of credits all looking at checking out that database. So you go like, okay, I'm gonna do some screen captures of that and show people what it's about. You want to post it in here when you go to post your discussion board thing. Buttons or Zoom thumbnails are in my way. Over under the plugins, Well, I clicked on studio earlier, but go to view all, you can see all the different apps. If you scroll down in studio, you can see all of the screen captures you made with that right there. And there's also a direct submission link where you can, if you use that studio screen capture or upload another MP4, so maybe you take a video with your phone and upload it there, then you can submit it directly from there. If you want to use videos, cancel, okay. And cancel and go back to where we just were in modules. Oh, back again. So a video submission, and that's a report. It's not an essay. You don't have to make a point and then support your point with evidence. You're just going to be like, yeah, Apple just released a new updates for a security update for their watch. So some sort of report on that. That's what these links are. So like SD Times, that's one that was a magazine. I don't think they send out a paper magazine anymore, but it used to be every month you get that nice little magazine on the shiny paper. Majority of open source contributors wish their company paid for their contributions. That's a big technology thing. That sounds like a debate that's going to be going on for a while. And it's the headlining SD Times. So it's going to come up in conversations all over the world, right? People are going to be looking at that. So that sort of report. Well, the same thing that this has. It's reporting on new technology. Look through there. Usually pretty interesting. Just find 3 new technologies, write a paragraph on each one. More is acceptable. So if you find something really interesting and you need way more than a paragraph, that is fine. In total, one to 2 pages of what I wrote. And for like the video submission, that's a new format. So try to estimate about the same amount of content you would have in 1 to 2 pages. There's an estimate here, and that is based off I think it was a 4 to 5 page essay that I did the 8 to 10 minute. So 8 to 10 minutes is long for the 1 to 2 one. What I copied and pasted that from was a 4 to 5 page essay. And I sat down with a 4-page essay and read it, and it took about 2 minutes to read each page out loud. So that was my estimate to start with, but it's an alternative format, so use your better judgment. If you think that content would fit here. But also in a video, it's easy to go over. It's a lot easier to go over in a video than in words. Or a blog. That's a much more modern format than something that could have been done on a typewriter. You want to have a blog? This video is from when I taught an IVYT class a few years ago. We did our journals as blogs on Google Sites. So it's a video walking through setting up Google Sites really quick. A place that you can get a blog up and going in like 5 minutes. So really easy. If you know how to make websites, you can do a lot better than that. Set up WordPress and connect to a database and get other stuff going really, really quickly, really nicely. But some sort of blog would be a much more modern format. Or other things. There's people in here like to code games, make an educational game, that would be fine, but that would be kind of overkill for just a small report. So just the one essay here. Some other assignments, look through there. Most of them are straightforward. Most of the assignments are copied right over from it. When the course shell was put together, y'all may have seen this in online courses since it's 200 level courses, nobody's first semester. For a while, we thought we were going to have that Udemy stuff started showing up, started using that in courses, but those licenses are going away. As a last ditch effort, it actually took a lot of effort to get licenses just for the Ivy Online classes. So using the standardized statewide short shells, we might not have licenses. So I looked around, and the data science lab in Python had the exact same thing as the what was on Udemy. Lab 5 in the data science course. So I signed you all up for the course. There's one assignment there in module 7. Otherwise, you can dig through the course if data analytics is what interests you. You can go through the whole course. Along that line, I also signed everybody up for the machine learning course. That's optional. That's a big popular thing to do with Python now. It's about a year ago when I went through it and got printed out the paper at the end of them. in a month, I took like 3 of them. So it didn't take long to get through it really. But if you're interested, it's optional. I just went ahead and signed you up for it. That way you can kind of dig around and start looking at how that works. It's all self-contained. It's designed to be like an asynchronous online course. But I just signed you all up for it. You should have got some emails about that. Did everybody get AWS emails yesterday, I think, or today? If you didn't get it, let me know. I will resend the emails. That's general policies, the changes. I didn't do the Python essay this time. I think that was the only assignment that really changed. Most of them are from the statewide course shell, except for the essay and then that Udemy one I had to find an alternative for. But in general, that's the policies. Does anybody have any questions about those? Okay. So now we can get into Python stuff. It's probably a good time for a break. Does 10 minutes sound good to everybody? Actually, we're going to do GitHub stuff first. So we'll get in. Well, I guess we might need to print out, make a hello world in Python or something to do that. So let's take a 10-minute break first, and then we'll get started into our course material. So my laptop says 7:12. So we'll get back to it at 7:22. I'll see y'all in just a moment.